Good evening, good evening, good evening. A midweek motivational message. Midweek motivational message. Comes from Numbers chapter 13, 25 to 14:9. Numbers 13, 25 to 14:9. And in this story in Numbers, the Israelites were so fearful of change as they approached the promised land. They felt it would be better to return to slavery. In the midst of change, we must learn to turn for the better, or our fears and lean upon God to find the new life that comes through change. So we begin this evening by looking at a time when Israel was wandering in the wilderness, moving away from Egypt where they were enslaved, and moving towards the promised land, known as Canaan. At the point at which we pick up the story here in Numbers, the Israelites are right smack dab in the middle of some pretty significant changes. This change, we're talking about change. They had spent generations under the thumb of Pharaoh, enslaved in Egypt. These people know nothing but slavery. But now they find themselves in the wilderness, led out of Egypt by Moses and the power of God. And they are quickly approaching the destination. The land promised to them, to their ancestors, the perfect place, the promised land. So that they know what lies ahead. The Israelites had sent scouts to take a look at the land. Where we pick up this evening, the scouts have returned to Israel, to the Israelites, with their report. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Indeed, this is a land flowing with milk and honey. But there is more. This is also a land occupied by the other. And the Israelites are intimidated by them, perceiving them as their enemies and stronger than they. So they begin to spread rumors that the land is occupied by giants. And then people really began to get scared. They wept and moaned and cried out to God. And then they started working on a solution. But the solution is not how they will overcome these supposed giants. The Israelites' plan is to return to Egypt. They would rather be enslaved in Egypt than enter the promised land. Can you believe it? I mean, if that's not the most ridiculous thing you ever heard. But here's what's really sad about the whole situation. It happens in our lives and in the church over and over and over again. We are faced with a significant change. We can't be certain of the process of the change or the outcome. And so we back away from it. Despite the boundary of the promised land, we, like the Israelites, don't want to venture there because we are afraid. So sometimes we actually choose to live in pain, to be unhappy, rather than face the change that could make things better. And we do this ultimately because of fear. There are lots of challenges to change. But I think ultimately what most of them boil down to is fear. We are afraid to give up what is familiar, or we are afraid because we can't predict the future. We can't see beyond our present reality. We might feel the changing means admitting that there is something wrong with us or with the way things are. Or perhaps we are fearful of surrendering control. There are all sorts of reasons we may fear change. But look again at this story of the Israelites in the wilderness and notice how destructive fear is for the Israelites in this situation. Fear blinds those Israelites to God, leading in God's promise of good. Fear changed the wonderful gift of the land into a place of death. Fear transformed our humans, the Canaanites, and others in this land into monsters and freaks of nature. Fear in each case is a mark of an end, a form of death. God has the power to defeat it, but not without some give from the Israelites, which he doesn't get. So it is that ultimately the first generation of escapees from Egypt died in the wilderness before entering the promised land because they refused to let go of their fear and give it to God. My friends, this evening, we serve a God of life, but we cannot experience that life if all we do is hang on to everything that is dead. We have to let go of our fear. We have to let go of our hangups. We have to let go of all the excuses we make about why we can't change. Think about it this way. You've heard of metamorphosis, right? Metamorphosis, of course, is the science fiction term for change of transformation. The most obvious example of metamorphosis is the caterpillar that goes into a cocoon and comes out sometime later as a butterfly. What if the caterpillar decided he or she was afraid of the dark? Or maybe he or she had claustrophobia and can't stand the thought of being cooped up in a cocoon. And so the caterpillar refused to wrap himself into a cocoon. That's it, right? Within a short matter of time, the caterpillar would die. And even if he or she does live for a while, he or she will never become a beautiful butterfly. He will never make that amazing change because he's scared. So God is present with us, and especially in times of change. If we can't let go of everything that is holding us back, then we can't make room for something new. And with God's guidance and God's promise, I can assure you that something new is going to be really amazing. Hey, have a blessed rest of the week. Share, tag, and tell someone. We'll be back here next Thursday for midweek motivational, inspirational message. Look forward to seeing you next week right here